It's not often I'm at a loss for words. But help me say thank you to the Christ Universal Temple Ensemble. Help me say thank you to our musicians. Help me bless and say thank you to Miss Shirley Walls. Help me say thank you to Mr. Martin Woods. Help me say thank you to Mr. Monte Filon. So we continue this journey of self and soul unfoldment wrapped around this idea that we can become complaint-free. And through that, recognizing that our propensity to complain is impacting our lives in ways that we really know not of. So on 2 weeks ago, when we entered into this series, we just began to look at some of the perceived benefits that we get from complaining. Right? Perceive, you caught that, right? Y'all, you're so smart. Y'all so smart. We on last week, we looked at how it is we take this next step. We begin, according to Will Bowen from the text, but I believe in giving credit where credit is due, and I don't know where she got it from, but I heard her say it first. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. But when I was in teacher training, I heard the Reverend Dr. Evelyn Boyd say that we progress through these stages. We go from being unconsciously incompetent. You don't even have to wonder. I did put it in my notes. I'm going to read it right from the paper. We go from being unconsciously incompetent to being consciously incompetent to becoming consciously competent and then progressing into unconscious competence. Yes? You got that? Balcony believers, y'all winning. You all need so much help and so much prayer. Somebody on your row, pray for somebody down your row. They need some prayer on that row. They need some prayer on that row. But on last week, we actually set some guidelines for gossiping. Is that right? We set some guidelines for gossiping. So we're challenging ourselves, and the challenge officially begins when you receive your wristband next Sunday, Harvest Sunday, on the 22nd. You will receive your official The Power of Gratitude Complaint-Free Challenge wristband. Is that right? And so we're challenging ourselves to eliminate complaining, gossiping. Like we don't really want that part of the challenge, Reverend. We're challenging ourselves to give up complaining, gossiping, criticizing, and being sarcastic, as we'll explore today. It's a very unique American phenomenon, this idea of being sarcastic. But on last week, as we talked about and looked at complaining, we didn't cover it in the lesson, but in the text, he talked about this idea of triangulation, this notion that when you are with people, you sort of automatically begin to adopt the behaviors of those people. And the example that he gave in the text, hold your book up if you have your book today. Hold your book up if you have your book. I want to encourage you to share these with the people in your network. Consider making these books some of your Christmas stocking stuffer some of your gifts, because if you stop complaining, you will soon find that you want the people around you to stop complaining too. It's not a complaint, it's just an observation. But in talking about triangulation, he suggested that it sort of happens when we see a group clapping. Like if I were to ask you to clap, so let's just try it. Go ahead and clap. Now notice, without my saying to you, clap in harmony with everybody else. How we naturally just sort of found the rhythm, we found the groove, and we were just sort of naturally clapping together, right? Nobody said do that. It's the same thing when you're around people who are engaged in certain behaviors, or it's the same way when you're around people who criticize or who complain. You find yourself having or feeling compelled to have something to complain about too. Nobody wants to be left out, right? And so if you're in a group, particularly a group of your peers, and they're complaining, like your day could be good. Your cup of coffee was perfect. Your ride to meet up with them was perfect. Traffic was smooth. Everybody in your household is blessed and doing good. But when you get to the meeting, the meeting, and the complaints are being put on the table, you want to make a contribution too. One of the other examples that he gave in the book is these groups of women. He talked about groups of women or actually a group of women in his city who get together and complain about how men are, about how all men are. This is a group of women who get together and complain about how all men are. I won't use the verbiage that he used because I don't believe it. I don't believe all men are anything but spiritual beings. Can I get an amen? And I know the brothers have some work to do. But I can hear the words of the song saying, be patient with me. God is not through with me yet. All of us have some work to do. But the point that he made in the book is if you are in a setting or a context and the nature of the criticism is that all men are dogs, you shouldn't be surprised when you get home and old Yeller is laying in the rocking chair. That's him. He said that. I didn't say that. Because we see men differently here. We see men perfect, whole, and complete, just like we see women perfect, whole, and complete. Just like we see children perfect, whole, and complete. This is a bash-free zone. Can I get an amen? And so today we are exploring the conscious competence stage. And so let's read together from our bulletin. The conscious competence stage involves my beginning to be aware of everything I say. The conscious competence stage involves my beginning to be aware of some of the things I say. The conscious competence stage involves my beginning to be aware of a few of the things. The conscious competence stage involves my beginning to be aware here and there of. The conscious competence stage involves my beginning to be aware of a couple. See, I don't want us to miss this now. Here is the beauty of the conscious competence stage. It's time for us to really become aware of everything that we say. And watch this. You can't become aware of everything you say without becoming aware of everything you think. So here is really, put this in your notes. This is really the stage where you begin to make the leap, right? This is the stage where you really begin to not only own, but direct the power that is resident within you. Is that all right? So the conscious competence stage involves our beginning to be aware of everything that we say. Turn to page 149 with me. Turn to page 149. Yes, Lord, I know, that's right. In the conscious competence stage, paragraph 3, the next to last sentence, I don't even know if this next to last sentence is the second sentence, if I'm reading this correctly. It's the third sentence. Do you see where it begins in? In the conscious competence stage? Hold your book up if you have it. Turn to page 149. I hope your page is just like my page. 149. Third paragraph down. Third sentence, beginning with in the conscious competence stage. Is that right? Let's read that together. In the conscious competence stage, one of the best things you can do is draw a deep breath rather than speaking out of hand. Let's keep going. Complaining is a habit, and taking a moment just to breathe gives you a chance to select your words more carefully, right? So if complaining is a habit, then adopting the ability or adopting the power to no longer complain is what I'm calling a super habit. If complaining is a habit, then having enough control of yourself to not complain is really super or extraordinary in my book, right? So how is it then that we become hypersensitive and at the same time develop the consciousness required? I am glad you asked. Here it is. We understand that consciousness is the sum total. Consciousness is the accumulation. Consciousness is the amalgamation of the ideas, thoughts, emotions, sensations, and knowledge that you and I hold. Does that make sense? So when we're talking about becoming hypersensitive, it's important that we recognize that we are working from the state of consciousness that already exists. So when I'm saying to you, no longer complain or take up the challenge to no longer complain, I want us to recognize that there's something in you that says, that man is crazy. When you decide to take up the challenge to no longer complain, I want you to know that there is something in you that says, girl, you crazy. When you decide that you are no longer going to be a person who criticizes others, there is a physiological transformation that's going to happen in you, because what you don't realize is that emotionally, physiologically, you get a rush when you criticize somebody else. And I just want you to be aware consciously that when you decide to take on this new behavior, physiologically, stuff is going to start shifting for you. It's going to feel odd to keep your mouth closed. Even, this is why you want to give this to the people in your circle. When they're complaining and you're not, it's going to be real uncomfortable. Because they're used to you leading the parade. You know that, right? You talk about a drum major for justice, they're expecting you to be out there like, everything is everything. Right? So how do you build the consciousness? How do you develop the consciousness that will support you through this challenge? Here is how you develop the consciousness that will support you through this challenge. We said that consciousness is made up of ideas, thoughts, emotions, sensations, and knowledge. Is that right? So ideas come from God. Ideas are the pure impulses of spirit. Yes? I said to you on last week that the idea for your breakthrough might be attempting to come through at the same time your mind is consumed with complaining. Yes? And so what this gives us an opportunity to do is clear our mind, to make the space, to clear the space for the deposit of the new idea that supports you in this challenge. You need a new idea. you need a new thought. You need a new thought. What is thought? Thought is a thing that's closed after the character given to you by the thinker. We say thoughts are things. Yes? So what you are going to have to do now is rewire, that's a good word, or recondition yourself in support of the new behavior. If complaining is in some way making you sick, then holding a new thought that encourages you to no longer complain facilitates your health. Does that make sense? So what you want to begin to do is hold thoughts that support this new idea. Paul says it this way: do not be conformed to this world. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So as a person who sees things, when you see something that you would have complained about, the impulse that must come to you immediately is to first hush and then see that thing differently. When somebody acts out in a particular way, the first impulse that has to come to you might be to bless them first and then begin to see them in a different way. When you're sitting in the group and they're talking about how all of anybody is anything, the first thing you might want to do is give yourself a moment to turn within and then recognize the truth that the only thing that's all of everything is God in everything. So you have to give yourself a new thought. You have to give yourself a new thought. You have to give yourself the benefit of a transformed, changed mind. Are you up for being transformed? Or are you okay with what does not work? If you want the people around you to change and be transformed, I'm suggesting that you go ahead and take the lead. If you want your space to be energized, I'm suggesting that you no longer pollute it with stuff that you don't need. This is the month of renunciation. This is a good month to eliminate everything that no longer serves you. Just be willing to let it go. Be willing to let it go. Be willing to let it go. It was good in the meantime. Be willing to let it go. You need a new God idea. Now watch this, watch this, watch this. If you allow yourself to be consumed with the new God idea, and then you allow your thinking to be aligned in support of the God idea and in support of this new challenge, what you will find is that emotionally, you start to feel some different kind of ways. See, many of us get to the place where we think it's good, and then the feeling emerges. That subconscious aspect of you that says, when you hear somebody saying that you are God incarnate, do you feel a certain way about where you have been? Mm-hmm. You feel a certain way. Have you ever woke up one morning and you were getting dressed to go to work, and then you decided you didn't feel like going to work? And before you know it, you were picking up the phone with that cough voice. Like, right? So the feeling will shift, the emotion will shift the move. Mm-hmm. Metaphysically, or in the revealing word, it says that emotion is the undisciplined or uncontrolled forces. And if these emotions are unconditioned and uncontrolled, when you find yourself feeling the need to complain, if your feeling nature is unconditioned and uncontrolled, you will just roll right with what you're used to. Does that make sense? This is why the scripture says, out of the heart come the issues. See, for many of us, our problem is not what we think. For many of us, our problem is what we feel. See, we know how to think, but we don't know how to feel. We know how to leverage properly the information that we read in the book, but we don't know how to feel about it. See, if you don't feel like you can do it, you never will. It's not enough to just think you can do it. You have to put some energy, emotion, some emotion, some feeling behind anything that you try to do, because if you are not excited about it, why should I be? You can't trick me about what you say you're trying to do. You come with this mealy mouth, mundane stuff talking about you ready to be great. Greatness is not attained by mistake. You gotta feel like there's greatness in you. Don't let the circumstances trick you into believing that you can't give up something that no longer serves you, but you gotta get on fire with yourself about what you can do. If your life is broken, then if you don't feel like you can fix it, you never will. Feeling, according to Reverend Ike, is what gets the blessing. Do you feel like you can move it? And when you think you can move it and you feel like you can move it, baby, it's only a matter of time before that thing is moving. We confront our challenges. I'm not leaving, but we confront our challenges on a thinking level, forgetting that it is both the thinking and the feeling that produces the manifestation. Are you still with me? We said that consciousness is shaped and built by our thought, but it also involves the ideas that come to us, the thoughts that we hold, the emotions that we must channel properly, and then it also involves those sensations, those exciting, interesting feelings that derive and give us some sort of stimulation. I want you to be mindful about this, because when you get with the crew and you start to feel a certain way, if you're not careful, you will fall right back into the mix, because it is stimulating to talk garbage about somebody else. I don't care what nobody says. It's stimulating to cut somebody else down because you think you can build yourself up. That's exciting. I'm not tripping. I'm just saying. It's exciting to talk about somebody else's business and not worry about fixing yours. That's thrilling stuff. Am I wrong about that? Not only that, it's much easier. Right? Imagine how easy it is to talk about how terrible your neighbor lawns looks. Right? You just sit back on the porch with your lemonade and point out the flaws and defects in their lawn. It's on the other side of the gate. Notice how that lawn in the back of their house does not affect what's happening in your house. Right? If they apply no fertilizer, it won't change your amount of mortgage. If they trim the bushes, it's not going to make your wife happier. What's happening in somebody else's consciousness has nothing to do with you. It is not your business. And just because you get stimulated doesn't mean that you're happy. Are you still with me? Let's go on. I need to go on. Let's take point two. I become consciously aware that criticism and sarcasm are forms of complaining. I become consciously aware that criticism and sarcasm are forms of complaining. I want us to read together some definitions that Bowen gives us for complaining. He says, turn with me on page 174. Turn with me on page 174. Let's read these together. Do you see where it says criticism is? So, all right. Do you see where it says criticism is defined? Let's read that together. Criticism is defined as pointing out another's faults in a disapproving way. Criticism is defined as pointing out another's faults in a disapproving way. Do you see on page 175 where it says criticism tears? You see that on page 175? Let's read that together. Criticism tears people down, and people who don't feel worthwhile don't feel they can do a good job. Are you still with me? Let's go to page 176, top of page 176. Are you with me? Criticism is, take it with me. I want us to understand what it is we are now consciously doing. See, at one stage, we were unconsciously doing it. Now we are at the conscious competence stage. And so I just want us to be consciously aware of what it is we're putting out creatively in a creative universe. Is that all right? So criticism is an attack. We're wondering why our good can't flow to us. From our bulletin, I'll read it. You don't have to take it. Criticism is a complaint wielded as a direct attack. So now when I think about criticism and sarcasm, the image that comes to me is the image of Godzilla when he's walking down the street, breathing fire and carrying on and knocking stuff over. But the bulk of the damage that's done by Godzilla is not when he comes through the first time. The bulk of the damage that's done by Godzilla is with the tail that's flailing behind him, really creating all kind of destruction and discord. So even though Godzilla is gone, even though the criticism and the sarcasm, even though the moment of the remark is over, the tail that leaves behind is still got somebody thinking about, what did she mean by that? What was she trying to say about that? What did he mean by that? What are they trying to say about me about that? So the tail is wagging behind, watch this, knocking down or being destructive, even though the bulk is gone. Have you ever spent time trying to figure out, well, what exactly did they mean by that? I remember, this was about 10, 12 years ago, shortly after Reverend Coleman had given me an opportunity to preach, and one of my good folks here shared a note with me that had been written, sent to the church, and the note said, Reverend Wells is as dumb as a box of chocolates. That's a true story. That's a true story, right? Was I Reverend at the time? I don't know if I was Reverend at the time, right? But he is as dumb as a box of chocolates. Now, let me tell you what I did. I WWFJFGD'd it. Yeah, maybe I am. Maybe I am. WWFGD. I WWFGFVGF. See, they might have been right. Good Lord. Good Lord, they might have been onto something. He needs some help. Somebody send him somewhere. Let me try it one more time. All right, WWFGD'd it. That's it. You want me to tell you what that stands for? What would Forrest Gump do? I WWFGD'd it. I asked him, what would Forrest Gump do? He would say, life is like a box of chocolates. You just never know which one you're gonna get, right? So I didn't trip when a person who doesn't know me made a distant impression about me at some stage. But now if one of you that I know and love, right, who knows me, like if my wife were to say, But criticism is a complaint that's wielded as a direct attack. It's intended to harm. That's the intent of the criticism. It can be disguised or veiled, but the fact of the matter is it's intended to harm. Right? Moreover, the nature of criticism in and of itself is that it's intended to segment. It's intended to separate out. Right? So particularly in a setting like this, or in a family setting, or in a communal setting, when you criticize those people, it's really an emotional eviction from the community that's shared by everyone. So when we criticize people, we are emotionally distancing them from the community that they're a part of. So it's not just words, it's an eviction notice. And it's an eviction notice that the person who receives is left to process and figure out and try to wonder, why am I being hurt by somebody I'm in community with? See, so the criticism is really a deeper element of this whole challenge. I don't want us to miss this piece. And I'm not suggesting that we should not think critically, right? As a scholar, thank you, box of chocolates person. As a scholar, I understand the importance of critical thinking. Let me say it to you this way. When I joined the Navy, I came home from leave on 1 week, and I got fresh money, so I went and bought myself a fresh pair of Nikes, brand new, fly out the box, and I wore them to my grandmother's house. Now, it just so happened at the time that Operation Push was boycotting Nike. And I am, in my mind, and always have been, my grandmother's favorite grandchild. She was crazy about me. And she loved me through a lot of my craziness. But when I showed up with these brand new Nikes on, she got on my behind in a way that she never had before or ever had to since. But what she forced me to do is think critically about why we were doing what we were doing. She said to me, this is my problem with black folks. We never stick together. That's her word to me. And I didn't know how to process that because all I was doing was sporting a fresh pair of Nikes. But from a critical standpoint, she was not criticizing. She was thinking critically, and she was challenging me to think critically about my behavior, about what I am supporting, about what I am saying, even without using words. So I'm not suggesting that a thinking people should not think critically. As a matter of fact, I encourage you to think critically about all aspects of your life. But there is a difference, and a different tone, and a different intention between thinking critically or being critical about a particular thing and criticizing, right? Your divine discontent should always make you a critical thinker. But you're getting into somebody else's business about their stuff is a whole different story entirely. Am I right about that? Now, because I wouldn't want us to not know how to deal with people who kick us out of the community, I want us to understand how to deal with people who are critical with us. Just real quick, here is how you deal with critical and sarcastic people. First, remember that it's not really about you as much as it is about them. It's not really about you, it's really about them, but you have a decision to make in terms of whether you or not you will make it about you. When you start ruminating about what they mean by that, you're starting to make it about you. Hurt people, it has been said, hurt people. So they may just be looking for a release. They may just be looking for a garbage pail. If you open yourself up to that, then that's on you. But you can choose not to accept the criticism. Remember, it's about them. Next, consider the source, right? Consider the source of the critic. Consider the source of the critic. And when you are considering that, be honest with yourself, there might be some validity to it. They might be right. Right? The reason you didn't get the job might be because you weren't qualified. You still with me? So there may be some validity to the critique. But if there is no validity, if the tone is wrong but the information is right, consider it. If the tone is wrong and the information is wrong, ignore it, let it go. What can you do when you deal with critical people, when you deal with sarcastic people? You can give them the opposite of what they give you. The Apostle Paul said it this way: when reviled, we bless. When persecuted, we endure. When slandered, we speak kindly. That's a big order for somebody who is under persecution. I like the way one pastor did it. Somebody said to him after service, laying out the sundry of things that was wrong. And he said, if I am as broken as you think I am, please pray for me. Right? So pray for those who despitefully use and abuse you. Last, be willing to give that person honest, defenseless, complaint-free feedback. Be willing to do that. Be willing to share that. As we get ready to go, let's take this last point. Let's read it together from the bulletin. We're past sarcasm. Let's keep going. If you are a person who likes to pray, the conscious competence stage is a good time to deepen your prayer life. If you're a person who likes to pray, the conscious competence stage is a good time to deepen your prayer life. So the opportunity that we have with this challenge, it's not solely about the growth that comes when we recognize that we are complaining and switch our wristband and begin the challenge anew. It's not solely about no longer complaining or no longer criticizing or no longer gossiping or no longer being sarcastic. Those are wonderful pursuits. But you are a spiritual being, living in a spiritual universe that's governed by spiritual law. What you do should support you as a spiritual being. And so at this stage, you have an opportunity to deepen your spiritual life. We're not going to make this a part of the challenge, but I just want to encourage you to. Whenever you find yourself catching yourself complaining, say a prayer. Say a prayer. When you get ready to change the wristband, thank you, God. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out prayer. You don't even have to tell anybody you're praying. When you get ready to change your wristband, say a prayer. Because prayer is your link to God. Is that right? Prayer is your accelerated mind action. Is that right? Prayer gives you the ability to transform and transcend the very challenges that would hold you down. So as we enter into this worthy challenge, I want to encourage you to not just be better in your soul, but to be better in the consciousness of your spirit. We have an opportunity to grow individually. We have an opportunity to grow collectively. Individually, we're strong. Collectively, we're unstoppable. Let's roll. God bless you.